Welcome back in. Welcome back in, TFA fam. We are back with another video. We got Cody back with us in the seats. Took a little time off. Now he's back. So that being said, let's just not waste anybody's time here and let's just get into the good stuff. Today we're going to be talking about four of our favorite middle round running backs that we're looking to target. Now, listen, we could have mentioned a couple other guys. We felt like we've touched on them a ton, and that's Cam Akers, Damian Pierce. I could just rinse and rewash, but there's no reason to continue to talk about the same players to give you the same content. So we kind of switched it up a little bit today. So, Cody, why don't you go ahead and hit me with the good stuff?
I'm going to have to just go against everything you just said and talk about someone that we have been talking about a bunch this offseason, but I can't get away from his ADP is still entirely too low, and that is one Miles Sanders, someone who I've talked about on a video, you've talked about on a video, but he's going as like RB21 at the end of the fifth round. And we're talking about someone who is in line for 240-ish plus touches. I mean, I think we're looking at like 230 as like a bare minimum, and the potential for even more depending on how they want to split up that backfield. Maybe he takes a little bit of a drop going from that Philadelphia offensive line down to Carolina's, but the Panthers were quietly ranked ninth in adjusted line yards last year. I think they dealt with a couple of injuries as well, so if they can get some of those starters back in the fold, keep them healthy for the majority of the season, that could be a big boost there. And I think where we could see a bump for Sanders and his fantasy value overall is the potential for his pass catching role to increase. He is more than capable as a pass catcher. We saw him get close to like 60 targets, I believe, as a rookie. He hasn't really been seeing that involvement in the past couple of seasons. But if we look at Frank Reich in his history as either an offensive coordinator or a head coach, the team's running backs on those teams over the last 9 seasons, they have combined for a sub 17% target share just once in 9 seasons. Like I said, with Reich as an OC or a head coach, and in each of the three past seasons, the running backs have accounted for more than 21% each of those years of the past 3 seasons, and that's been with Indy, obviously. So I really like the upside for Sanders this year. Like I said, RB21 is just too low. I think he should be going up in like that RB15 range, and I think he ends up crushing his ADP this year.
There's a lot to like there with that whole situation for Miles Sanders. I'm going to hit on Alexander Madison. Obviously, Dalvin Cook was released, and it sounds like he could be going to Miami. Well, who knows? We'll see where he ends up. But Alexander Madison still really hasn't risen all that much. RB 18th or 60th overall. Now, there's not a lot to talk about in terms of what he did last season as he was kind of the backup. But what the opportunity that lays before him, I think, is what really we should talk about. And that's, Dalvin Cook last year had a 74% opportunity share with 15.5 carries, 3.5 targets per game. He was also fifth on red zone touches, and he was RB 14th in fantasy points per game. Now, one of the biggest things everybody talks about with Alexander Madison is he hasn't been all that efficient. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Dalvin Cook wasn't efficient at all. Like, he was terrible last year in terms of efficiency. 42nd yards created per touch here and 30th in breakaway run rate. Like, I don't care how efficient he's going to be. If he's going to see this type of opportunity, 75% of the opportunity, or even 70% of the opportunity from this backfield, he's a guy you can count on getting 18 to 20 touches per game, and there's nobody else there in the backfield to even worry about. I mean, we're talking about like Ty Chandler. We're trying to make a thing, and like these guys that are absolutely nothings that probably. And this is a player in Alexander Madison that they invested pretty substantial money in terms of running back money in to bring back, and they released Dalvin Cook. So they obviously have the faith in Alexander Madison. I know people want to try to write him off by, oh, whatever, it's Alexander Madison. He hasn't been very good. I don't care. This is going to be still one of the better offenses in the league. There's going to be tons of opportunities to score, and he's going to be involved in the passing game. And so he checks every single box we should be looking for. And quite honestly, it's not crazy to say that he should be going like a low-end RB1 or high-end RB2, and he's not right now. And so if his ADP stays the same, I'm going to be all about that. If you draft a wide receiver heavy early, going Alexander Madison in the middle rounds is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. It's all about the opportunity. Someone who I thought I was going to be able to talk about, but his ADP was starting to rise up a little bit, was Joe Mixon, basically for the same thing you said. Everyone was talking about, with Joe Mixon, his efficiency dipping down, but he is the only show in town at this point with Samaje Perine leaving. And that brings me to my next pick, sweet little segue there, and that is Samaje P. Ryan, obviously, who landed with Denver. You want to talk about a team spending like decent money on a running back? He got what, like 2 years, $7.5 million, which is good money for Samaje P. Ryan, especially at the running back position. There has been some positive buzz around Javonte Williams in the past couple of weeks, just in terms of his potential availability and how he's looking for the beginning of the season and trending in that direction. But I still think even if Williams is like good to go early on in the season, I still think that P Ryan can be a solid pick. He's going at the end of the ninth round. He's like RB, when it's like 38, 39, depending on what site you're looking at for ADP. But we also have to remember that Williams' injury wasn't just an ACL. He had other ligaments involved and that were affected in that injury as well. Something similar to what J.K. Dobbins. We saw how he looked at the beginning of the season, how that went for him. He was okay in terms of fantasy purposes once he got back on the field at the end of the season, but he still didn't look right. We also have to look at Sean Payton and his coaching history, and that we're talking about a coach who is no stranger to using a committee approach at the running back position. And then they have nothing behind those two. Kev, I'm sorry, your boy Tyler Beatty is there. Then it's like Tony Jones, and I think maybe like a UDFA rookie from this year. So there's really no one there to worry about outside of Javonte Williams. Obviously, the Broncos also went out and spent big on that offensive line as well, bring in McGlinchey and Ben Powers. And P. Ryan has been a legit option when he's given the opportunity. Last year in 2 games without Mixon on the field, P. Ryan averaged 20.4 PPR points per game. To me, he's being priced as if he's like only a handcuff. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he's going to be plenty involved. And especially if you're drafting him at that point and Javonte Williams isn't ready to go early on in the season, you have a plug and play flex option right off the bat.
Yeah, pour one out for Javante. Obviously, everyone knows that I've been following this channel for long enough that I am a Javante Williams stan, and even I am. Even as with the positive reports was limited in OTAs, it's really hard to trust him. I mean, we know that like J.K. Dobbins last year, we started getting some positive stuff around him. We thought he was going to be ready, and it kind of took till late in the year for him to kind of really come to fruition. So that what worries me the most with Javante Williams, the gruesome knee injury. I think he is a definite buy in 2024. But in 2023, I just don't think you can. So I like that call with Samaje Perine. Lastly, I want to hit on Isaiah Pacheco, RB26, or 85th overall right now. Now, on the surface, yes, he rushed for 800 yards last year, but I think there's some things to look at. If you look for the first 8 weeks of the season, Pacheco only played 17% of the snaps to McKinnon's 44%, and then a CEH played 38% of the snaps. Now, once you go from weeks 10 to 18, it completely flipped where Isaiah Pacheco handled 45% of the snaps, behind only Jerick McKinnon's 46%, and CEH was like 7% or something stupid. But he averaged 14 carries per game and 70 rushing yards per game, and he rose over that span to 8th in yards after contact per attempt. His 633 rushing yards over that span was 5th most among all running backs, and he did so on a lot less carries than most of those guys were in that group. He also averaged 11 fantasy points per game, which I get it. It's not great, but it's still not terrible, especially when you're talking about 85th overall. He also finished 8th in next gen stats, rushing yards over expectation. He also gained 2 or fewer yards at the lowest rate in the league last season. And that's right there with guys like Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey. And he also had an expanded role in the passing game once we got to the playoffs, which is one of the biggest things people talk about with Isaiah Pacheco is his lack of pass catching involvement and Jerick McKinnon still being there, who they brought back. But we saw in the playoffs, he actually averaged 10.8 yards per reception. And we saw in the AFC Championship game where he had 5 for 59. And they've talked this offseason a lot about wanting to get him far more involved in the passing game. Now, it's also something we should be mentioning that a lot of people talk about his efficiency. And the dude played with a torn labrum and a broken hand last year. Like, those are two things that are going to affect your ability to be able to be a pass catcher, at running back. And so I do think those things should be taken into consideration when you bring up Isaiah Pacheco. Like, do I think that he is going to handle 70% of the opportunities? He's going to see 70 targets like Jerick McKinnon? Absolutely not. He doesn't need to do that. But I definitely think he can be a guy that's going to average 15, 16 carries per game. But I do think you're going to see a bigger role in the passing game, somebody that could see 50, 60 targets over this next season. And if he can do that in the league's best offense behind one of the best offensive lines in the league, there's definitely some room, some positive regression there coming in the touchdown department. We talked about how few he was used. He still had 5 touchdowns last year. So this could be a double-digit touchdown season incoming for Isaiah Pacheco. I get it. He's not sexy. I know there's some people that are worried about him and people worried about Jerick McKinnon. I don't care about Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was, everybody talks about him, but he was a complete fluke. I mean, he scored what, 7 straight touchdowns in the receiving game. Like, that's not going to happen again at all. Yes, he's going to be involved in the passing game, but he's a non-factor in the rushing game, and he's really we saw in the playoffs where Isaiah Pacheco actually was the man inside the goal line as well, inside the red zone, where that kind of flipped for where it was Jerick McKinnon earlier in the year. They need to trust him as a pass blocker, which he really got better at as the season went on, which is one of the reasons they weren't trusting with that third down role. So with all that being said, I really like Isaiah Pacheco this year, especially at cost. You can get a running back in one of the league's best offenses. I'm going to be about that life. And considering where he's going, all of the risk is already baked into it. So I absolutely love Isaiah Pacheco. Let us know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts about the guys we just talked about? Who are we missing? Like we mentioned, guys like Damian Pierce and Cam Akers definitely would have made this list. We've talked about them so much. We felt like it's really not bringing anything to the table. Those guys are definitely must draft in the middle rounds as well, at least for me. So that being said, hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.